So, I'm reading each sentence, okay? We exist superficially by a becoming in time. So, what is that? The soul comes down and takes on a body, mind, life. And that's your becoming. Becoming is as opposed to being. Becoming is in movement and a change, transience, whereas being is permanent. Okay, so the soul is from the higher levels of being, comes down into the physical world in time. Time is exactly time and space is the physical world where there is movement. Okay, so we exist superficially by becoming in time. Superficially because we are limited to our body mind life. We are not even conscious about soul. But here again, out of that becoming in time, the surface mind, or normal mind, which we call ourselves, is ignorant of all the long past and long future, aware only of the little life which it remembers. And that also little life, one life. And that also little because you don't know when you were born, you have no memory of what you were when you were born. And I like to ask my students, what is the earliest memory you have? Okay. So, for instance, my earliest memory is only when I was about 6 years old. The rest is all gone. Surely there must have been some memory, but I remember being a small town. Now maybe it's not so small. Nizamabad, okay, about 100 miles north of Hyderabad. I remember that. And I remember the unpleasant experience of going to school, okay, and it was a horrible school. We were all sitting on the floor and all people with illnesses and skin disease and all sorts of things. So I told my father I'll never go again. So that was the earliest memory I have. I don't remember anything before that. Vague memory. So some people remember even when they were 3 years old, but beyond that you can't remember. So, which we call ourselves ignorant of the long past future, past lives, and the long future. You will continue to exist even after this life, aware only of the little life which it remembers, and not of all, even of that. We can't remember. And if you are unlucky, then dementia sets in. Even later in life, also, you will not remember what you have done. Okay? So, we readily believe, and then there is a comma dash. So we'll do one thing. We'll read the sentence without the comma dash first. Then we get the basic idea. And then we'll see what he's trying to say parenthetically. Okay. So I'm skipping the comma dash area. Okay. We readily believe that we came into existence first by our physical birth into this life and shall cease to exist by the death of the body and the cessation of this brief physical activity. Okay? Brief because relative. Okay? People will say, oh, 100 years is not brief, but it is brief when you compare it to what you were in the past and what you will be in the future. Compared to that, it is brief. That's it. Now, I read the parenthetical phrase. We readily believe what? For the simple and compelling but insufficient reason that we do not remember, have not perceived, are not informed of anything else. That is why we think that it's only our physical birth here. Okay? We exist only after our birth. For the simple and compelling but sufficient reason that we do not remember, have not perceived, are not informed of anything else. Okay? But when you go to the spiritual plane of consciousness, you can recover your past lives. Okay? That we come into existence first. Normal idea, I was born and I will die, and that's my life. Okay? But this is obviously not true, because it's true of your body mind life, but certainly not true of your soul. Okay? Everybody has a soul. Even insects have souls. And that soul there is not developed like a psychic being, but it is potential divine presence. The divine presence is there. Potentially it can develop into something conscious. Brief physical activity. I read the next sentence. But while this is true of our physical mentality and physical vitality, our corporeal sheath, the physical sheath, corporeal, bodily, okay? Corporeal sheath, for in French we have the word corps, C-O-R-P-S, okay? That's it. Just 1 second, I have lost the page, I have to get it back. Just 1 second. I have to get my system checked. I don't know why it is disappearing. Now, delete 582. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. So, our corporeal sheath, for they have been constituted at our birth and are dissolved by death. Okay? Now, we must remember this, right? That you have a body which everybody can see is dissolved. You have a vital also which is formed in life, but it dissolves after death, after some time. First the body dissolves, then the vital dissolves, and then finally the mind dissolves. Sometimes the vital and the mind don't dissolve because they have been very firmly found, firmly formed. Okay, the formation is very strong, so it doesn't dissolve very easily. And if the vital doesn't dissolve, it continues to remain in the physical world without a body, and that becomes a phenomena of ghosts. Okay, and mind also. Sometimes the mind also does not dissolve, which is very, very well formed. Okay, so it tries to enter into other minds and give suggestions. Okay, so that also is there. So I'm reading that sentence with sentence again. But while this is true of our physical mentality and physical vitality, our corporeal sheath, for they have been constituted at birth and are dissolved by death, it is not true of our real becoming in time. Which is the real becoming? Your psychic being. But he is using the word becoming for the psychic being. So how is that? Because becoming, the true being is always static, but that is in the self. The psychic being is evolving. Okay? It does evolve, so it is becoming. The psychic being at first is only a divine presence, and slowly it develops, and then you become conscious of it after many, many lives. Okay? In fact, the Tantra says that to get a human birth, you need about 1 lakh lives, beginning from a unicellular creature, slowly, insect, smaller animals, bigger animals, and finally man. 1 lakh lives. So you can see how slowly the evolution is taking place. So, for our real self in the cosmos is a superconscious which becomes the subliminal, self and throws up this apparent surface self to act out the brief and limited part assigned to it between birth and death. So what is between birth and death? Your present life. Okay? And you have a very brief and limited part assigned to it. So in this life, every life, each individual is told to solve one small problem. Okay? And you solve that problem and go on to the next in the next life. So that's what we're saying very clearly. Apparent surface self, your body, mind, life, to act out, okay, the brief and limited part assigned to it. But when you become very developed and you become a yogi, maybe the part which you have to play in the physical world is not so small. Okay, you become the vibhuti. For instance, take Vivekananda. So certainly he didn't have a brief and limited part. He had to, his goal was to take Vedanta to the West, and he did that in no uncertain manner. He did so successfully, he did it, that now, after 100 years, things are changing entirely. The whole world is slowly turning to Vedanta. Okay? If not Vedanta, at least Hinduism. Okay, so throws up this apparent self to act out the brief and limited part assigned to it between birth and death as a present living and conscious self-formation of being in the stuff of a world of inconscient nature. So, the stuff of a world of inconscient nature is matter. Okay, so you have to take on a body with matter. You have to take on a vital with a subtler substance. You have to take on a mind with an even subtler substance. But they can all be forms. They can all have forms. And then you act out your life, learn your lesson, and the body dissolves, and you go back and start all over again the next life. You learn something else. Okay. In one life, you may have courage, you may have learned courage. In another life, you have learned unselfishness. In another life, you will maybe learn courage. Okay. Another life, you will have the sensitivity of nature, the beauty you will learn. So like that goes on, so little by little, until finally you are sufficiently well developed to enter into yoga. Okay. The true being which we are no more dies by the cessation of one life than the actor ceases to exist when he has finished one of his parts, or the poet when he has poured out something of himself in one of his poems. Very interesting what Sadhguru is saying. He is comparing your coming into the world and disappearing from the world like an actor. Okay? He enters the stage and acts out his part, because he has said that. Earlier he said to act out the brief and limited part. So he is continuing the image. Okay, so you can see how consistent is the prose. He has said earlier to act out the brief part. So now he is actually bringing the image into very clear prominence. Okay, so the true being which we are no more dies by the cessation of one life than as compared to the actor who ceases to exist. He doesn't cease to exist when he has finished one of his parts, or the poet when he poured out something of himself in one of his poems. So the poem is the individual coming onto paper. He is comparing it to the human being, human soul. The soul is the poet, and he is creating. He is pouring himself out into onto paper, the poet. And so you are also pouring yourself out into the physical world and taking on a body-mind life. Interesting image. The first one is very clear. The second one is a little complicated. The poet is pouring out a poem, but part of it remains up. So yourself, which is not coming down into the physical world, remains up. He is a poet, and if part of it is coming down, let me expand on this a little bit. The relation between the self, which is above and never comes down, and the psychic being, which comes down, what is the relation? The relation is that of a representation. Okay? The self puts out something of itself into the physical world, but remains up, doesn't come down. So the psychic being is, you can say, the ambassador of the self. And that's why when the psychic being is fully developed, it can go and merge into the self. Okay? So this is the relationship. So that's why the image of the poet making a poem is very, very valid. Okay? So whether or no, normally we will say whether or not, but Sirvi is saying whether or no, we accept the theory of many births of the same soul or psychic being. There you are, okay? Soul here used in a very wide sense, okay? Because the same soul when you are not developed, psychic being when you are developed. So say you can have, if you take out 200 lives earlier, you were a soul. But now after 200 lives, maybe you have a psychic being. In various human bodies upon this earth, certain it is that our becoming in time goes far back into the past and continues far on into the future. For neither the superconscious nor the subliminal can be limited by a few moments of time. The one is eternal and time is only one of its modes. To the other, to the subliminal, it's an infinite field of various experience, and the very existence of the being presupposes all the past for its own and equally for the future. That's a very interesting sentence. Let's have a look at it. Okay. For neither the superconscious nor the subliminal can be limited because both are infinite in a sense. The embodiment life is finite. So he is taking up first the superconscious, then he is dealing with the subliminal. So then neither the superconscious nor the subliminal can be limited by a few moments of time because the self is timeless. Okay. Even the intraconscious, you have the experience of timelessness because that's only in the spiritual field, not in the physical world. The one is eternal and time is only one of its modes. To the other, that means the subliminal, to the subliminal, in fact he's saying that, to the other, to the subliminal, it's an infinite field of various experience and the very existence of the being presupposes all the past for its own and equally all the future. So, in other words, when you go into a subliminal, you can remember your past lives. That's what he's saying. Yet, of this past, which alone explains our present being, I will expand on this a little bit also afterwards. Our mind knows, if knowledge can be called, only this actual physical existence and its memories. Yet, of this past, which alone explains the present being. So, this is what he's saying. I'll give you a case. It is a very interesting case. I think I've spoken about it earlier, but I remember it. We have a garden in the ashram called Mare Garden. It's on the road to Karalur. Okay? Beyond the Indira Gandhi Stadium, just a little beyond that. So there was a man who was working there, and one day he swallowed insecticide and committed suicide. Okay, and Parichanda, the gardener, okay, Parichanda's correspondent also has come out. He was very disturbed, and he asked Mother, he is working under me, and is it possible that I have done something which has annoyed him, and therefore he has committed suicide? The mother told him, no, it has nothing to do with you. It has something to do with past life. Now, mother can know that, and Parichanda cannot know. Now, this explains the sentence. See, yet of this past, which alone explains the present being. So, the explanation of this suicide in this life was originated in the past life. So, that's exactly what Sadhu is saying. Okay? Yet of this past, which alone explains the present being, whatever you were in the past, that is what you are developing now. Because what you are now is the result of what you were earlier. Okay, law of karma. Okay. Our mind knows, if knowledge can be called, only this actual physical existence and its memories. We don't know the memory of past life. of the future, which alone explains the constant trend of our becoming, it knows nothing. So we are completely ignorant of our past and our future. But if you go into the subliminal, some indications of things to come in the future are revealed to you. It can happen also by casually, or it can happen by you are built in such a way that you can know what's going to happen. That also is possible. So fixed are we in the experience of our ignorance that we even insist that the one can be known only by its vestiges and the other cannot be known, because the future is not yet and the past is no longer in existence. So I'll read that sentence again. So fixed are we in the experience of our ignorance. We are very, very limited. We know very little. That we even insist that the one can be known only by its vestiges. What does he mean by this? This life, whatever happened in this life, vestiges, that which has happened in the past and is remaining. Okay? So that you can know. So we can say, yes, law of karma is there. 2 years ago I did something which was not good and now I'm suffering for it. So this is what I mean by the one can be known only by its vestiges and the other cannot be known. The past life cannot be known. And because the future is not yet and the past no longer in existence. Okay? That's why we don't know. Yet are they both here in us, the past involved and active, and the future ready to evolve in the continuity of the seeking spirit. This is another limiting and frustrating ignorance. Okay? And this ignorance is listing out all one of the ignorances. This is what he calls elsewhere the temporal ignorance. Okay? The temporal ignorance is you don't know your past in time. That's what it is. Now we can go to the next paragraph. But even here, the sentence. So somebody has to read. Who will read? Suki, maybe you read.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes.
But even here.
But even here, the self-ignorance of man does not end. For not only is he ignorant of his superconscious self, of his subliminal self, of his subconscious self, he is ignorant of his world in which he presently lives, which constantly acts on and through him, and on which and by which he has to act. And the stamp of his ignorance is this, that he regards it as something quite separate from him, and not self, because it is other than his individual nature, formation, and his ego. So too, when he confronts his superconscious self, he thinks of it first as something quite other than he, an external, even extracosmic God. When he confronts and becomes aware of his subliminal self, it seems to him at first another greater person or another consciousness than his own, which can support and guide him. Of the world, he regards only one little foam bubble, his life and body, as himself. But when we get into our subliminal consciousness, we find it extending itself to be commensurate with its world. When we get into our superconscious self, we find that the world is only its manifestation and that all in it is the one. All in it is ourself. We see that there is one indivisible matter of which our body is a knot, one indivisible life of which our life is an eddy, one an eddy, one indivisible mind of which our mind is a receiving and recording forming or translating and transmitting station, one indivisible spirit of which our soul and individual being are a portion or a manifestation. It is the ego self which clinches the division and in which the ignorance we superficially are finds its power to maintain the strong, though always permeable walls it has created to be its own prison. Ego is the most formidable of the knots which keeps us tied to the ignorance.
So there is a third ignorance. One by one, he is listing all the ignorances. There is a whole chapter actually, very the 7 ignorances he goes on. Okay. Here he is not giving the names, but other place he has given the names also. So this is the ego is the most formidable knot which keeps us tied to the ignorance. We'll read the we'll go sentence by sentence and see what he saying. We have time, 15 minutes. But even here, the self-ignorance of man does not end. In fact, Srindu says that there are 7 ignorances. Okay? Ignorance of our past, ignorance of our psychic being, ignorance of ourself, ignorance of the God, of the divine, ignorance of so many different types of constitution. What we are, we have an inner mind, inner vital, inner physical, that also we don't know. Okay? So, psychological ignorance also we don't know. So, there are so many ignorances. So, but even here, the self-ignorance of man, ignorance of himself, okay, does not end. For not only is he ignorant of his superconscious self, we know nothing about ourselves, which is up in the vertically in the second level, of his subliminal self, which is inside us, of his subconscious self, which is below us. We know nothing at all. He is ignorant of his world in which he presently lives, which science is trying to slowly find out about the world, the circumconscient, if you want. Okay? So he is ignorant of the superconscient, the intraconscient, the subconscious, and also the circumconscient. The circumconscient is the world. He uses this word. Huh? Here he has not used the word, but that's it. Everything around us is the circumconscient, the world in which he presently lives, which constantly acts on and through him, and on which and by which he has to act. Now, this is again something which he is stressing, that we are in the physical world, the world is acting on us, and we are reacting also. A yogi learns not to react because in bahya sparsha, the external touches which come to you, he is not moved at all. He remains absolutely samatha. So, this world will continue to act with you. It will give you all sorts of things. Speech will come to you, music will come to you, smell will come to you, taste will come to you from the outside world. But you have to be absolutely uninvolved. You have to have samatha, samatva. Okay, that is why this is what happens normally. Okay, and the world is interacting with you and you are interacting with the world, but you don't interact with the world in that way. It's not a reaction. Okay? You do continue to act in the world, and the world also is acting on you. You have to eat after all. Okay, you have to go relieve yourself. That also is there. You are acting with the physical world, but you are not affected by it. He is ignorant of superconscious self, of his subliminal self, of his subconscious self. He is ignorant of his world in which he presently lives, which constantly acts on and through him. Now that's interesting. In other words, sometimes it is acting on you, but sometimes the force is coming through you and spreading also outside. Okay? One good example of that is the disease, physical disease. You become the cause of infection of others. Okay? Very common. Cold, okay? And other things. You spread the thing. So then the world is acting through you. Look at the way they express it. Fantastic. Constantly acts on you, but also through you. Okay? And on which and by which he has to act. The world. On which he has to act and by which, because he is part of the physical world. On which you are acting in the physical world. And by which, because you have a body-mind life, and body-mind life is part of the world. So that's why by which. Okay? And the stamp of his ignorance is this, that he regards it as something quite separate from him. The world is separate from him. Not as not self, because it is other than his individual nature formation and his ego. So too, when he confronts his superconscious self, he thinks of it first as something quite other than him, an external, even extra cosmic God. External, it could be in the universe, but even extra cosmic outside the universe, the transcendent. When he confronts and becomes aware of his subliminal self, it seems to him at first another greater person or another consciousness than his own, which can support and guide him. So, when you experience the subliminal self, then you find, my God, I was thinking that I am the body, mind, life, but I am not that. I am the whole universe. So then you feel is something else altogether. Of the world, he regards only one little foam bubble. Okay, look at the language. Okay, you are just one little foam. Which one little foam bubble? Your life and your body, as himself. But when we get into our subliminal consciousness, we find it extending itself to be commensurate with the world. Well, you think you are body, mind, life, but note interestingly that this foam bubble is not included the mind. He is including only life and body, okay, the vital and the body. Because it is the mind only. It is the Manomaya Purusha which gets the experience of the subliminal self. That's why he has not included that. And now he's saying, when we get into our subliminal consciousness, we find it extending itself to be commensurate with the world, the cosmic consciousness. It is equal, commensurate, equal to the world. We become one with the world. When we get into our superconscious self, we find that the world is only its manifestation and that all in it is a one. All in it is our self. Now he is explaining what he means by the one. We see that there is one indivisible matter of which our body is a knot. So when you go to the superconscious, you don't see your body as something separate. You see it as one small knot in universal matter. You see matter, you are not seeing the body, one body. You are seeing matter as the one that is causing the body. One indivisible life, of which our life is an eddy. Eddy is a current, okay, a small current. So, of which our life is an eddy, one small ripple of a current. One individual mind, of which our mind is a receiving and recording, forming or translating, and transmitting station. So look at the description of the mind. It is capable of receiving other people's thoughts or even thoughts from the universe. It records it also. Not always, but it records. It can also make thoughts. It can form or it can translate. When someone is giving you a thought, it's coming into your mind, you translate it into your own terms. And also you can export it, transmitting station. So this whole process he has described also in the synthesis, okay, in a different way. So your mind is capable of receiving and recording, forming and translating, and transmitting. One indivisible spirit, of which our soul and individual being are a portion or a manifestation. So you don't see the individual thing, you don't see the individual body, you see matter. You don't see the individual vital, you see universal prana. You don't see one individual mind, but you see the mind plane of consciousness. You don't see the one individual soul, you see the divine soul. And the individual soul is only a small part of that. Amsha Sanatana, as the Gita says. Your soul is one portion of the universal soul. So oneness is very obvious when you go to the superconscious. The division starts becoming less and less obvious. Okay. We find, we read that. I read the next sentence. We see that there is one individual, oh, that we read, sorry. It is the ego sense which clinches the division and in which the ignorance we superficially are finds its power to maintain the strong, though always permeable walls it has created by its own presence. So, he is telling you that you are actually the superconscious, you are this superconscious, you are the subliminal, you are the inconscient, you are the subconscious, and you are also the world, the subconscious. But you think you are limited. So that's an egoistic ignorance. Okay? It's the third one. It's the ego sense which clinches the division. The division, you see yourself as divided from others, and in which the ignorance we superficially are finds its power to maintain the strong, though always permeable walls. Permeable, that which can go through. Okay? When you have a surface which does not allow the water to go through, it is not impermeable. But when you have a leaky puja, it's permeable. The water is coming through. Okay. So actually we can. The world is interacting with us, therefore our walls are permeable. Okay. It has created to be its own prison. Even physically, our physical body also is permeable. Na? We are breathing in the air, and even our sweat is coming out into the outside the body. So permeable, even physically we are permeable, let alone vital and mind. Ego is the most formidable of the knots which keeps us tied to the ignorance. So this is third ignorance. First ignorance, we don't know God. Second ignorance, we don't know the subliminal. Third ignorance, because of the ego, we don't know that we are the whole cosmos. That's what he said. So he will continue with this ignorance in the next. So next time we will go to this para which says, as we are ignorant about existence and time. Okay? So we'll stop here today. I've got 3 minutes only to go. As we are ignorant about existence. Okay. We'll make a note.
Yes, yes. I will.
Okay. Au revoir, everybody.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Au revoir.
Thank you, Rameta.
Okay.
Thank you, Ramana.
Au revoir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ramita.